Oh, we can do any quest, or we can do any of these. It's not being limited. In this bonus, we can do any of them. I was going to be like, oh, okay, today's Monday. It's for Mavica, so I was going to farm Mavica's materials. But it seems like during this event, we can pick whatever the fuck we want.
あなたに安らぎがあらんことも。
行きましょう。
加速するぞ。この天下で裁く。
輝くコブラに姿を現せ。
やっ
はっはっ
やっ太陽の方向を石煙に葬られよ。
後方へお下がりください。
怖いか、それとも恐怖を抱く勇気すらない。みんながそばにいてくれるわ。私と打ち合う。この燃え上がる炎で少しはまともになって止める勇気はある。
僕の名のもとには元素なんだけどね。
みんなは俺が守る。石煙に葬られよ。破滅の時がカウントダウン。燃えろ。煉獄の投影にする。この燃え上がる炎で太陽の方向を私と打ち合う。
僕の名のもとに
みんなは俺が守る。いいだろう。私に挑む資格を認めてやる。燃えろ。全力攻撃だ。無駄な抵抗はやめろ。逃しはし。加速する。これはあらゆる善意を焼き尽くした刃。
世界をね
届けるといい。
どうぜ不意打ち。
みんなは俺が守る。
よっ
燃えろ。
どうぜ不意打ち。よっどうぜクラッカー。迎え光の名のもとに中断よ。
太陽の方向を全ての始まりにする。燃えろ。アクセル全開。
星と深淵。無事今日の依頼。星と深淵。
もうええよ。
この同点も。同点について。
やっ。
Oh, that was really lucky. That combo just really fucked her up. There we go. All done.
こんにちは。同志を探しに来たのですね。残念ですがまだ帰ってきていません。もう2日も経ってるのに。そう多くはありませんが珍しいことでもありません。そうなのか。
よう、旅人にパイモンちゃんか。久しぶりだな。ガミン、
久しぶりだな。ひひ
ああ、荷物を運ぶよう頼まれたんだ。陳玉の谷までな。
王城洞から陳玉の谷にってことは。
So, like, one thing I complain about Wuthering Waves is that they introduced us to a character that they just basically didn't assume that you'd ever meet. They assumed that everyone who met that character, like, everyone who met that character, would have done the event that was only alive during the patch it was alive. So they had this one event where you met the character, and then they were like, cool, now you have your companion quest, which we made the event a prerequisite for, so you have to do that event before doing the character quest. But then when the next patch came out, they dropped that event, and dropped the prerequisite, so now you're just starting the character quest without interacting with them as part of the event, but still somehow knew them. So I complained about that, because obviously that's dog shit. We shouldn't recognize it. They should program in two states to the game. The state where someone actually did the event and can recognize them, or the state where we didn't do the event, and we ask, no, I'm not sure who that, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, and then they proceed to introduce us. Like this one. So obviously, with that in mind, I'm now kind of keeping an eye for that shit in Genshin. Because for the most part, like, Genshin is pretty good at it. But Gaming was introduced as part of last year's Lunar New Year event with the Chenyu Vale area, I believe, or shortly after Chenyu Vale was released. And you had a whole big long quest line regarding him, and he was like the performer of that patch. So now we're meeting him, we're recognizing him, but what where Wuthering Waves failed is they were assuming we knew something and we're talking about events we'd never been to, and that's the problem. So this one, I'm kind of going to be curious, will they heavily reference what we did in the last patch or not? If they don't, that's fine. And actually, the problem is I can't even prove it either. I need to find someone who didn't do last year's Lunar event, get to this quest, and see if they change the dialogue. Because Genshin has changed dialogue depending on whether you've done something or not. So, which is exactly what you should do, you know? When designing a game that's supposed to have longevity, any sort of live service game, for every event you do, you should always program 2 sets of dialogue. The dialogue for someone who's done previous events, if you have, you know, if they're in any way related, you know, the same characters are appearing, blah, blah, anything like that. You should have a set of dialogue for the assumption that the player has beaten the previous event, quest, whatever. And then you should do a set of dialogue for your, assuming that they're a brand new player, right? Have not done any of the other events, and you should do like that. That's the correct way to program a live service game. Operate under 2 assumptions. 1, that they've done everything, or 2, that they've done nothing, and then have 2 sets of dialogue for both. That way people who have been playing for a long time feel rewarded and be like, yeah, thank you for recognizing my achievements before. And the people who have not played the game aren't getting this weird dissonance where it's like, why are they pretending, like, why are they acting so familiar? Like, who is this person? You know, like, he showed up, we introduced him by name, but now, look at this. A delivery, so his dialogue is already introduced him as, like, yes, I'm from Chenyu Vale, that's where I am. I have a father there, so it's like, cool. Now we know a little bit about him, he's from Chenyu Vale. Kind of like how Yan Lan was also referenced that she's from Chenyu Vale as well.
実は2日前。
ビビった。どっかで情報が漏れたのかと思った。
You know, and he coming here as a courier. You know, so basically we already kind of know a little bit about him. We know his name. We know he's from Chenyu Vale. We know that he's a courier. You know? And like, we're not going into the past so far. We'll see. But it seems like they do a good job. But they're like, cool. We're just not going to reference any events. Like, and that's the other way to do it too. Is that you could just have a character subtly. And that's the thing. It wasn't exposition, right? They didn't dump a shitload of exposition saying this is Gaming. He does this, 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 and this, right? No, they casually mentioned, you know, what he's doing. Oh, I'm here, coming here from Chenyu Vale. We reference this stuff. Like, it's more natural. Like, this is the kind of natural dialogue you want to have, and this is how you naturally tell exposition. So now we know, you know, his name, where he's from, the fact that he has a father, that he's a courier. We know all these subtle little things, and if you've done the previous event, we know that we actually did help him repair the relationship between him and his father, and I think he didn't want to be a courier as well. So the fact that he's still doing it, it's like, cool. Like, you kind of, and like, we helped him come to terms with that too. It's like, sure, you can be a lion dancer as well as a courier. You know, the father was like, no, you have to be a courier, and he's like, but I want to dance. And so now he's looked like he's able to balance both of them. But yeah, so it's pretty cool that they do a good job with this, which is what you should do, right? So yeah, and that's all we know. So like, not doing the last year's event doesn't really matter. You know, nothing about last year's event was directly referenced. We only just knew, if you had done it, then you'd know, oh, cool, like, seems like him and his father still have a good relationship. It's good that, you know, their relationship hasn't deteriorated. They're still on good terms. You know, what we did before is still fixed. Is what it alludes to. Hello there. So I think that's a very good way of what happening. Like, the problem with the Wuthering Waves for Fei Xiao, or not Fei Xiao is the Honkai Star Rail, for the glasses girl. I'm walking. I have a treadmill in my living room, so basically I play this game on my PS5, and so I walk on my treadmill at about 3 miles an hour, get my steps in, get a little exercise, and then do my dailies. So it's pretty motivating because it's like I'd be playing the game anyway, so it's like cool. So, but I can only walk, so I can't run because that would, one, be too tiring, and it'd be impossible to speak as well. Even now, I have to kind of like regulate my breathing so that I can speak while also walking. But yeah, as I was saying, it's like Gaming was introduced last year, and I was comparing it to Wuthering Waves. So Wuthering Waves had a event with the Glasses Girl, where apparently there was an event that was live during the patch she was released, and they had a character quest that you could do after doing that event. The event was a prerequisite, but then the next patch appeared. The event went away because it expired, like most events do in a live service game. And even though the event was a prerequisite for the character quest, they just dropped the request. They just dropped the event, dropped the prerequisite, and you can just start the character quest right away. Which didn't make sense because like we go to somebody and they are like, hey, we're looking for a painter, and our two options are, oh, I know someone like that, or oh, like that person. Basically both choices say yes, we know a painter, we know someone who could help. And then after selecting one of those two, then we do a brief little synopsis of, oh yeah, we met this girl at this event, and they show us a picture of an event we weren't at because it's after the patch. And it's just like, what? Like, if you're ever doing a live service game, you should never directly reference events that the players weren't doing. You either make them prerequisites and force them to do it, force them to do whatever event you're trying to show them. Like, don't have something happen and then directly reference, oh yeah, by the way, you weren't here during this patch. This is when this happened, and here's a picture. Here's a little picture that we used. It's like, that's bad. And then like we go and meet her, and they like again assume that we had already interacted before, but like this is literally the first time we've ever interacted with her. So it's just bad planning, bad design from a live service perspective. Like I was saying, you should always, for a live service game, you should always have like two sets of dialogue, two sets of quests, essentially. Well, it could be the same quest, but two sets of dialogue. A set of dialogue where you're assuming that the person has done the event. Like basically, you should create a set of dialogue assuming that the player has been there for every event and done all the prerequisites and all that shit. And then you have the event. And then a set of dialogue assuming a brand new player, like a player just started playing your game and hasn't done any of the prerequisites. They just, picked up this quest because it was available and had done it. And because I had, not played the game for 6 months, I hadn't done the event at the time. Now, like, is it bad? Not really. Like, because then the event started and then the character quest started and it was like, okay, cool. Like, sure, they stumbled the intro of not properly introducing us and assuming that we did something we didn't do, which of course feels like shit. Because you're just reminded, oh, by the way, you missed this thing and you'll never be able to do it. Which, who knows how much context that event might have had. Like, who knows what was revealed during that quest, that event quest, that you just missed. So yeah, feels like crap. Not a good way to design a game, especially a live service game, because the idea behind a live service game is you're constantly attracting new players. So you should always be like designing things in a way that even if a player starts on, even if a player starts a year from now, and obviously it's kind of hard to tell. It's easy to think retroactively. So obviously when they're making that event, they just didn't think, oh yeah, what about next patch when this event goes away? How are we going to treat the quest? They just thought, nope, here's the character, here's the event, let's just do this, and then, let what happens happen. And like, it's just bad design. It's just no foresight, no forethought, which actually, I think that's actually the biggest problem with Kuro games is that the lack of foresight and the lack of planning is incredibly evident in how they do their quests and stories, because they just constantly contradict each other. They constantly forget these things that, oh, this event happened this time, which contradicts what you're saying now, or they do something in the past, forget that they did it, and do something different in the future. it's just like they're just so isolated, where they only think about the current patch and that's it, and they just don't think about what the next patch or the next quest is going to be, and it just leads to a lot of distance when people are doing these quests back to back, and especially like it's stupid because like you might be like, oh well, it's between patches and stuff, and like I noticed discrepancies within a patch, you know, saving Shorekeeper. They created all that quest line in one patch, and they still were discrepancies within the patch. Same for Renacita. They created all of that for the 2.0 patch. There were contradictions within the story. Within 30 minutes of the quest, right? They reveal some information at one point. 30 minutes later of playing the game, it's like, hey, we revealed some information that contradicts what you just learned. And we're not going to explain it because no one's going to ask the smart questions. You know? Like the Renacita one is super obvious too, because like we see the stained glass window describing their history, and they're told, and we're like explained what it means. So clearly it was hundreds of years ago, because like the Order has existed for a while, and they said that at the end of the Dark Tide, the Order was formed by the first Primarch or whatever, Primus or whatever. And then later, 30 minutes later, we're told that after the Dark Tide, the Order did all these things. But it's like, well, no, like the Order didn't exist until after the Dark Tide. So, but you just clearly referenced that the Order was already was active during the Dark Tide, which makes no sense because they didn't exist until afterwards. And we don't ask that question. We're just like, yep, okay, well, let's take what you say as fact. And then they're thinking, well, okay, well, it's just one person saying it, maybe they're wrong. But then it's confirmed once more by other people saying, hey, yeah, the Dark Tide happened 20 years ago, and then the Order did, and all this shit happened. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because we clearly see another Dark Tide being referenced before, and no one like questions that at all. And maybe it'll come out to be like, oh, there was more than one Dark Tide, or the Dark Tides happen on a cycle. And the history that we learned was one of the first Dark Tide cycles, and the one 20 years ago was the most recent one. But like, no one mentions that there's been more than one ever. So it's just like so inconsistent. And that's basically Kuro games and Wuthering Waves in a nutshell. They're just so ridiculously inconsistent. And so obviously when I play a game like this, and like I've been kind of spoiled on Genshin, because Genshin has been consistent. You know? The stuff that they said has been consistent. I can't remember a time where they've contradicted each other. But to be fair, I also play Genshin patch by patch. I've been playing Genshin patch by patch since its inception. So if there are inconsistencies between patches, I wouldn't be aware of it. So like, if there was, like if someone started playing the game now and just went sequentially through the story back to back in like a month, you know, so clearly they experienced the entire story right back to back, so that they remember all of it at once, then yeah, there might be some inconsistencies. I'm not sure. For me, it's just like, you know, I started playing the game 4 years ago. So something that was referenced 4 years ago, maybe they contradict it in the Natlan patch, and I wouldn't know because it's been 4 years. And so, you know, some inconsequential detail perhaps at the time, so I didn't remember it. But then it turns out, oh, whoops, that's a major inconsistency now type thing. You know, I wouldn't know. So there is that. Whereas, like I played up to 1.1 in Wuthering Waves, then took a 6-month break because the game was just kind of boring and kind of shit. It just wasn't super fun. You know, it was just kind of grindy, kind of annoying. You had to pay too much attention. It just, I don't know. It wasn't a ton of fun. But then 1.1 came out, and I got Jinshi. And Jinshi and Lin and Marina are a pretty good combo. Like, I basically used that combo for the entirety of Renacita as well. So, like, that was fine. And I got them, like, stacked. I got them leveled up. I got them good echoes and shit. So that made it a little easier. But, like, yeah, just some, like, combat challenges and just exploration just seems kind of time-consuming, kind of just not as fun as Genshin. Genshin's a little sillier and more enjoyable. And obviously less skill-intensive. So it's like, yeah, when you're doing the exploration content, which is the, you know, the casual content of the game, you know, you don't really want to be sweating super hard with your combat. And the problem, I think, while it's cool, echoes are you can get echoes out in the world, so essentially you can you can farm artifacts, you can farm your equipment forever. You can just keep fighting echoes over and over and over again. While that's cool in a way, it also kind of sucks because like when you're exploring, you feel compelled to fight every single thing you come across, simply because you only have a 20% chance of an echo, so you just need to kill every single monster you come across so you can get a huge stockpile of echoes for later, for later leveling up and shit. So it just like, it makes it less enjoyable because you can't just like explore. You have to constantly be fighting to constantly be getting echoes so that you can just, so that when you get a new character, you don't have to do it manually. Because like going back and actually intentionally farming echoes feels like shit. Having to be like, oh man, I need some attack percent echoes, one cost attack percent echoes, and then having to go onto the map and find out, where monsters from your set live and farm them. And like, I feel like shit because now you need them, and every echo, so it feels like shit when you don't have an echo drop, and then when an echo does drop and it's not attack percent, it feels like shit again. So it's rough when you're like just focused on that, and it's time consuming. Whereas like in Genshin, you go into an artifact dungeon. Sure, you have a 50% chance of not getting the set you want, but that's also exists in Wuthering Waves. Monsters are in multiple sets, so you could get attack percent on the wrong set. So it's the same way, but like artifact domains are quick and a little more efficient because like here you're spending resin, and so you can only use so much resin, so they just make him faster and more impactful, so you can do it quicker. So I kind of prefer that. Because if I stockpile my resin, stockpile my fragile resin, and then just, blast through it in 30 minutes, I now have a big pile of artifacts that I can level and get stronger. Whereas for Wuthering Waves, 30 minutes of echo farming is going to get you maybe like 10 to 20 echoes total. So it's like, because it's time consuming to run between echoes and then fight. And because it's never just the echoes you need, it's also random echoes that you don't need. So so it's just, which is kind of like how it is for artifact farming, but either way, it just kind of, the gameplay loop isn't super fun. And the events are like too combat oriented and a little too challenging to be enjoyable. Although I did like the co-op event. The co-op event was fun because you can go crazy. Like, you don't have to worry too much. You can just go fucking insane. Whereas all the other combat ones, it's like, no, you have to be super fast. You're on a timer, and I hate being on timers for anything. I just don't like timers. No matter the game, I just don't like being timed. Even though I can do it within the timer, just having a timer looming over me just makes me feel like crap. Yeah. Like, it does combat better. The Wuthering Waves does do combat better, so for challenges, it definitely does it better. But the problem is, it's like, it's not segmented enough. Where they don't segment its combat challenges enough from the relaxation content, because like the exploration is your casual content. Exploring, 100%ing a map, all that stuff. That's like the stuff you do to relax. You're like, cool, I want to go explore, I want to go find treasure chests, I want to do all this. But the fact that like combat is just everywhere, and combat is just more challenging. I'm not really sure why. It could be that I'm actually manually turning it off. When I'm not speaking, I'll mute my mic just to get rid of the white noise. But it also could just be the mic on this controller's shit. Hard to say, because I can't hear my own voice, obviously. So I can't hear how well it speaks. But yeah, so like that's why I always kind of find annoying a little bit, is that like there's just not good segmentation, because obviously the game's revolving around its combat, and even to like 100% a map, most of like the Renacida areas, as an example, had like 4 to 5 actual like combat challenges where it's like, oh, you have to go to this area and you have to fight a bunch of mobs under specific conditions. Like you have to counter or parry or dodge or like, not take too many hits. And you have to do like three things. So some were like, oh, okay, kill this thing last while also not taking more than 10 hits while also doing something else. And if you did all three, you can either do all three at once, or you could just, do like you didn't have to do all three at once. Obviously, if you did all three at once, you only have to fight them once. But if you did two of them, you could restart the fight just aiming at the third one, and just get the third one, and they would consider it as complete. But even still, it's just like it's tough, and that's required to 100% a map. And so it's like it's kind of rough because like if you just want to go and relax and explore, if you really want to also 100% explore something, you also have to be relatively good at combat, or also have to do combat, which is trying. Can be not super enjoyable. So, I mean that's why the game just isn't as popular as Genshin. It's because Genshin appeals to the casual crowd, not just in character design, but like the story itself is a little bit childish, a little bit of power friendship type, a little shonen jumpy kind of. Oh, that's way far away. Fuck. Oh yeah. We're going all the way back to Kinchi Village. Wow, this is. Oh yeah, we're going to this place. Is there a closer teleport? Guess this one is the closest. So yeah, this is a little more family friendly overall. In its story, I mean, I don't know. Like I wouldn't say. The Wuthering Waves story is it's not exactly it's not family friendly, but it also is just confusing because they don't tell it very well. Which is like, okay, well it's not good, obviously. Hello, ghosties. How you live? Cool. Anyway, so it's the kind of thing where it's like it would be fine if they told the story better. And I guess that's the thing, is that if they told the story better, I'd probably complain about it less. Because I would just be like, well, sure, having some slight combat challenges here and there, that's fine, because the story is so compelling and good and interesting. But when they constantly keep fucking up the story, and being inconsistent and contradict themselves from previous patches, or the patch doesn't make sense because there's these huge plot holes, you're just like, it's just like, why should I take this story when you clearly don't take yourself seriously? Like, you're clearly not treating the story seriously, so why should I treat it seriously? And I don't mean seriously as in the king as wrote, but I mean if you're not going to be consistent within your own story, then it just ruins the immersion. I can't get into the story because you constantly keep shooting us in the face, and be like, yeah, don't mind the shot to the face. You're trying to walk through the story, and and Kuro Games is constantly kind of trying to trip you up. So you're like, whoops, yeah, get to the end. Don't mind the fact that we keep contradicting ourselves. And I even tweeted a really good example of it. Obviously, it's one of the more minor ones, though, but it was a really, really good example. Because basically, if you ever did the Carlotta quest in Wuthering Waves, the whole thing was oh, her uncle's an asshole. And she goes to the vault, where she's like, oh, wait a minute, there's been some discrepancies about this data terminal. We need to go to the vault where it's kept. And we go to the vault, and she's like, oh my god, the data terminal's core is gone. And I'm looking, the data terminals are small little, gourds and shit, should be relatively small, but she's like, no, this thing's hard to move. She literally says, oh, it's very hard to move these things. We have to think of a place where you could store something like this. I'm like, oh, okay, well maybe it's not a data terminal, maybe it's a machine that creates data terminals, because the Montelli family was creating data terminals that could work in other countries, so presumably they have their own production facility. So I was like, oh, maybe when they said data terminal, they meant a data terminal creation machine, and the core of that could be pretty big, right? So I was like, okay, sure, the thing's big and heavy, or big and just bulky and hard to move. So clearly, yeah, having it be stored at the docks that the uncle has complete control over, yeah, that makes sense. Keep it out of the way so people don't see it and observe it. And then when we finally get the core, it literally fits in the palm of Carlotta's hand. And so I screenshotted that. I screenshotted both. I screenshotted her saying how big and bulky the thing was and how hard it is to move. And I screenshotted the data terminal core in her hand, on the palm of her hand, as her hand's outraised with it on top of it. And I posted them together and said, and I tweeted saying, the current state of consistency within Wuthering Wave's story, which is a great example. Obviously, does it really matter? No. But it does. I mean, the whole reason we went to the port is because we were looking for a place where you could store something big and bulky and not have anyone notice. But when it's like, oh, you mean this thing that could just fit in your pocket and also no one would notice? Put it in a cabinet drawer, put it in your desk. Like, you could literally put it anywhere and no one would notice. So, it's stuff like that. And like this is, I mean, it was super bad in 1.0. 1.0's story was absolute dog shit in pacing. Its pacing and consistency was absolutely terrible. And 1.1 was slightly better. 1.3 had a huge gaping plot hole at the end, but up until that point it was fine. And 2.0 didn't have any gaping plot. Well, it kind of had a pretty big plot hole. But it's possible that they do explain what it is. So the existence of multiple dark tides. If we do later talk to the Sentinel, and they say, yeah, there actually are multiple dark tides. We've been experiencing dark tides, every 50 years or every 100 years. The first one was 120 years ago. The last one was 20 years ago. Sure, that would make sense. And maybe they just forgot the previous one, or maybe the previous one was hundreds of years ago. And that's why everyone's forgotten about it, so they only know of the dark tide that existed 20 years ago. So they could kind of explain that away. Is that the history we learned was an ancient history, which would make sense because we found the stained glass windows in a ruined building. And the dark tide was... And when the people are referring to dark tides, they're referring just to the more recent one. Yeah, could be. It is a little weird that no one remembers the older one, but whatever. It is what it is. And I think they've done that multiple times where you're thinking, oh, okay, this must have happened ages ago. And then they're like, nope, it's 20 years ago. Like, we're thinking, oh, we must have left Black Shores ages ago because no one remembers us. They're like, no, you left 20 years ago. I'm like, what? How does no one remember us if we left 20 years ago? Like, I get you deleted data about us so no one could, look us up. But we had to have interacted with people. Like... We literally saved Camilla and had to drop her off at Black Shores. Someone had to have interacted. We had to have interacted with someone to drop her off to make sure she was kept up. We had to have interacted with her a little bit before we left 20 years ago. And then even before 20 years ago, we had to have done stuff. It's not like we were locked in a lab or something. I get the shorekeeper was helping us. It was essentially our personal assistant. But we had to have left. We had to have eaten. We had to have, gone out. So there had to have been people that helped us, providing us equipment, food, people who could just casually recognize us. Maybe they don't recognize us as the leader of Black Shores, but they should at least remember us. Oh, hey, yeah, it's you. I haven't seen you in 20 years. You look the same. That's weird. But they're like, nope, no one remembers you. So that's why I initially assumed, oh, it's been a long time then. We've been gone for 100 years or something. We've been gone for 50 years. Everyone who knew us is long dead. Especially when she says that we've had Abby for millions of years. It's oh, okay, so we're just a really long-lived, immortal person, and we left Black Shores ages ago. Especially when we learned the Tetris system has been monitoring laments for the past 10,000 years. But then it's no, you left 20 years ago. I'm like, what? That makes no fucking sense. So yeah, a lot of little shit like that. Or just it feels like they don't even they don't draft their story. They just go be yeah, we're just gonna write whatever the fuck we want. So, and so I had obviously my complaints before 2.0, but I heard 2.0 was better, and it's story-wise, not really. The story's more interesting. It's nice that the world isn't completely fucked. Because, all Jinzo was just completely screwed over. Like it's all messed up and destroyed. Whereas at least Reseda looks pretty for the most part, although there are some destroyed parts. But like it was mostly pretty, and the story's kind of interesting, and it's it's better than 1.0. It's better. I mean, it's the best story they've done so far, but like they still keep fucking up the same thing over and over and over again of just story consistency. It's like they don't ever proofread their work. It's not like or they don't ever play the quest back to back and realize, oh, whoops, that contradicts it. See, so and like there's just so many instances where you're just like, yeah, you clearly don't proofread shit. So like with 2.0, they came out and released the game on PlayStation. Now they did have controller support on PC, but it wasn't as good as it is on PlayStation now, so they obviously improved upon it, made it better. But then they had this event where you can get Sanwa's skin, and basically after 7 days passed, people were able to get her skin, and they fucked up, and you could not claim the skin on controller. Is that the buttons they had linked to redeeming the daily rewards were fine, but they didn't add a button to redeem the skin when it's available, and there's no way to move the cursor over to select it. So you basically, if you were on console and on controller, you could not redeem it at all. And they were just basically saying, well, in the meantime, you can just hook up a mouse and keyboard and click it, right? And you can get it. And then they did patch it shortly afterwards. But it's like, I'm sorry, but like, really? Like, you didn't test this thing? Come on. And like, it obviously took them a while for the player base to notice before they did it, but like, it clearly just shows that they themselves didn't test it on controller. They presumably tested it on mouse and keyboard, but didn't test it on a controller. Either a controller plugged into the computer or on console. And it's just like, come on, dude. Like, how hard is it for you to test on two things? Like, especially something that easy. Just, load a save state where it's completely unlocked, and then go through and redeem every single reward, and then redeem the skin afterwards. Just do that on both systems. Problem solved. Like, clearly that works. Like, clearly that. So it's like simple shit like that. It just shows a lack of care. And so that's why I'm kind of like, I'm kind of going to give up on Wuthering Waves, maybe until 3.0 again. I don't even know. Like, I got 100% on all maps in 2.0, and it took me like 70 hours to do that. And it was not super fun. It was like a huge time suck. It was fine. It was fine to kill time, but I don't need to kill that much time, right? I don't need... Like, I've been playing Cyberpunk, right? And I platinumed the game. It took me 110 hours. So, like, 50% more time, or like, in two-thirds the amount of time I 100%ed a 2.0 in Wuthering Waves. Like, I could have done another Cyberpunk, right? I could have done another full-fledged game in those 70 hours. A full-fledged game with a good story and compelling gameplay and all that shit. So I'm just like, even if 3.0 comes out, do I even want to play it? Because like, the story's going to be crap because they keep fucking up over and over again, and they keep fucking up every patch. Like, literally every single patch they do that has story content, there's some sort of inconsistency in it. Like, they just can't. Actually, no. I think Encores was fine. I don't think there was an inconsistency in Encores, because Encores didn't mean shit. Like, Encores was like, hey, I'm going to help a girl deal with the loss of her mother. And so it had, like, nothing to do with anything else. It was just like, yep, we're going to go into this fantasy world and help you deal with the loss of your mother. And that's it. So there was no inconsistencies there, because there was nothing to be inconsistent with, because, like, they didn't have to relate to anything else in the game. But any other thing, I think every other quest they've ever done has always had something wrong with it. So, I don't know. I haven't done Rocha's, Rokoka's, or character quests, so maybe I should do that. Maybe they did that better. And like, because like the Carlotta one had the obvious thing, which I tweeted about. So it's like, even then they still fucked up. So the 2.0 patch, this 2.0 story was inconsistent. The 2.0 character quest was inconsistent. Let's see, the other character quest might be, well, I haven't done it yet, so maybe. So, I don't know. I think I'm popping in I'm popping in enough to just like redeem my resonance chip. I'm thinking maybe I should even stop that. Because that's basically what happened in 1.1. I almost 100%ed Mount Firmament. Like I did all the story, and then all I was missing was just a few character quests. But when Chang Li came out, I got Chang Li, I pulled her, spent the rest of my crystals on her, and then stopped playing the game. So I didn't do her character quest, which came out. I literally just pulled her and then stopped. Like I pulled her, quit the game, uninstalled it, and then didn't play it for 6 months. So it's just like, I kind of want to be there for 2.1 because I know Shorekeeper's coming out on a rerun, and I kind of do want her. Because right now my only built healer is Verena, and even though I have Baizu, I don't know, maybe it's Baizu, because Baizu is in Honkai Star Rail too. But yeah, the girl, the black-haired girl, yeah, who's Ice, the Glacio, black-haired girl is also a healer. I don't have her built though, but Shorekeeper's a really good healer, so I'm like, I might just pop in just to spend my whatever crystals I got from exploring everything on her, and then stop again. So yeah, I could do exactly what I did in 1.1. I could just pull on Shorekeeper, then uninstall, stop playing the game, wait for another big patch, try to catch up. I mean, that 70 hours was me catching up. It was me doing the 1.3 patch and exploration, the 2.0 patch and character quests and exploration. Did all the quests and character quests, and all together that ended up being 70 hours. So it's like, I do. I guess I do kind of regret it at this point. Because it's like, man, I could have really... Those 70 hours could have been much better spent. Oh no, that's why I'm thinking Baizu, because Baizu's in this game. Oh no, yeah, it's Bailu in Honkai Star Rail. Shit, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Baizu in Wuthering Waves. It was Bai something. But it could be Baizu, because like it could be the characters that are used in Baizu or have to do with like medicine or something. And so it could just be that that's why they both are using those same characters and have the same name. Maybe. I'll have to actually go back into Wuthering Waves to see what her name was again.
本来なら絶対無理だ。私が付き合うのは別に構わないぜ。だがせっかくの祭りだ。主張
分かっているわ。でも私が聞きたいのはあなたの次の言葉よ。
たく腹の底が。古雲閣の教文だな。請け負ってや。
義理がたい北斗船長のことだからそう言ってくれ。
褒め言葉はいい。その代わり仲間たちにたっぷり報酬を払ってくれ。なんせ今
容赦ないわね。いいでしょう。あなたの分もちゃんと。
天中園様にそんな真似させられるわけないだろ。なんなら私の分はあんたにくれてやるさ。まさか新調する仕事まで。お、食べ人にパイモン。よ
あ、北斗。
久しぶりだな、チビ。相変わらず元気そうじゃないか。
え？
怪盗さよし
See, and like, and no interaction we've had with any of these characters required required us to know who they were, right? Like, we didn't need to really interact with Ning Guang. We didn't need to, well, we didn't need to do the story quest. Like, all this stuff is like story agnostic, where it's like, we don't need to know who Beidou, Ningguang, Yilan is. They showed up, we said hi, we said their name. That's it, right? They didn't reference anything we've done in the past. They didn't reference anything they've done in the past. You know, that's the way to do an event like this. That is, you know, that anyone playing the game, no matter where they are in the story, can do. You just got to make the story stand alone by itself, and then everyone can enjoy it. You know, you can involve characters, but just don't reference events or quests that you have done with them or that they've done. You know, just don't involve that backstory. You know, if you want to involve shit like that, make them requirements before having quests like that. That's why, like, a lot of like, Archon quests require previous stuff. Archon quests have specific prerequisites, and then sometimes there are event quests that are like, no, you have to have at least gotten to this point of the game for the story to make sense. Which is, you know, it's fine. It sucks for some new players, but like, they are pretty good at allowing at least you to teleport to mini game locations regardless of your progress in the game.
でもまあそんなところね。旅人とパイモンはあそこに行ったことがあるから一番の。
あそこって
二人が人を探していることは知っているわ。だから今の状況から判断するに風道種7。
教会？
ええ。リーユへの生と死の教。
ちょっと待った。お前たちも。イエランか。
疑問を抱くのも無理ないわ。時間が一月前、総務士は警察層のお年寄り、その半月後、風道主が私のところに来て、リーユへの生と死の教、そして3日前、風道主が再び訪ねてきた。彼女とは2日後にまた会う約束をしたんだけど、風道主の姿が最後に確認されたのは無謀の丘。
フータオまで閉じ込められたんだ。
というわけで、教会を調べた経験のある2人に。
もちろん、オイラたちも同じ。でも、前はフータオが案内してくれたから入れたけど、オイラたちだけ。
Okay, well this is something, right? Last time we went to the border, I don't remember going to the border. So this must have been a Hu Tao character quest. So this, I would say, is an oversight. Now, it's a potential oversight. Unfortunately, I can't tell. Because last time we went to the border, I've done Hu Tao's character quest, right? So, I'd love to see the quest dialogue for someone who's brand new at the game to see if Paimon does the same thing. Is the dialogue from Paimon to us at this point of the game, last time we went to the border, or if you have not done Hu Tao's character quest, does it say something different? Like that. That's the interesting thing.
予断を許さない状況よ。ねえ。助かるわ。私一人で風道師たちを助けられる。休ませてあげたいところだけど、イエラン。ええ、でしょうね。
Although actually, yeah, they did say that we've been there. So actually, that's an interesting question. Is there, if we hadn't done Hu Tao's character quest, what would they have said then? Would they have just asked for volunteers? And we would have volunteered? Or would they just said, because of what we've done in Leeway, we're strong enough where we might survive?
教文は先ほど北斗船長が引き受けてくれたから、残る証文についてはいろいろ考えた結果、高馬大使双眼鏡。ええ。残りの4つの門の位置も引き続き調べている。時期にわかると思うわ。もしも最悪の状況になった場合、風道主の気になることがあれば。法人についてはあまり詳しくないけど、今の状況でその陣を敷くとなると。確かなことは。
Well, yeah, it was the butterfly, and that would be obviously represented by Hu Tao. Oh, okay. Wait, okay, so now we're seeking the assistance from Zhao, but that's kind of weird because they obviously just referenced, oh man, like we can't find him, so you're the best one to go into the chasm to protect that gate. But then why are we going to that inn? Like, why are we seeking assistance? They didn't ask us to seek assistance. They asked us to go find them. So, like, I think realistically what they should do is they should just be like, go, you know, have a rest at Wang Shu Inn, because obviously it's on the way to the gate. So it's like, you know, so you could argue that we walked from Liwei, and we're walking all the way up there, and so we stop off of here to have a rest. So it is kind of weird that they're just like, nah, you huh? Is it Ling Long? Ask somebody. That's weird. Not sure why I passed. What avatar I got. Anyway. So yeah, that is the I think the question shouldn't be this, because like we weren't asked to find Zhao. They only mentioned Zhao after we had left, so we wouldn't know to look for him. So why are we seeking his assistance? Like arbitrarily. I do get they're trying to include a lot of characters, but I think what they should have done is they should have just said, "Hey, go rest there," and then while resting there, he then approaches us saying, "You know, I've heard disturbances and blah blah blah," and then we'd be like, "Oh yeah, actually yeah," and then then we could ask for his help perhaps. But like in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? No, right? Because obviously this is the only issue I have is just the quest prompt. And the dialogue could just make sense, or make more sense. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.